In this life, there are moments when we feel a shift in things. We leave a moment different from when we entered it. These moments make us who we are. Let's talk about them. So, today, our episode is about expectation versus reality. I want to first thank April for taking the last few episodes to lead the show and tell some really fun stories about her life. It has not only let me know a little bit more about her, but also I've just really enjoyed those stories. I think that the Carlos Lee story is probably one of my favorites so far. And I have heard several people tell me that, I told you this, I walked into my, one of my friend's house and her daughter's like, Carlos Lee. Because it's becoming this following, and it's just I think a really great story. And I think that's why I love podcasting so much with you and in general, because we get to tell these fun stories that there's not a lot of magnitude to all these stories, but there's still great stories and they're little parts of us. And that's to me what being a human is. It's all these little tiny stories, all these little pieces that make us who we are. And I think that's one of my favorite things about podcasting is we get to tell these fun stories. And sometimes maybe people don't love them just as much as we do, but we're laughing. So it's fine with me.
I know. So I don't care. I don't care if nobody listens. No.
Right. No. Yeah. Well, I mean, we're going to talk regardless. So if you're out there and you love this story, cool.
So and you might be going to lay this knowledge out. What the hell is expectation versus reality? Because I've heard you use that a lot in the last few years. And even though we talk about it a lot, I'm still not 100%. I could not give a presentation on it. So maybe I'm sure you're going to do that. But that's something that's in the back of my mind is what does that mean in the context of what you're going to share with your observations?
So I'm going to go through and tell you my why and how it all happened and how I figured it out. And then in the end, I'm going to wrap it up and I'm going to explain to you the actual physical, what it technically means, because it's very interesting. So we're going to go through this. Why this episode is important to me. It's actually super important to me because the culmination of how I got here had changed my life. It very much changed my life and how I feel inside, how I show myself outside, how I react to things, how I express things, how I basically take things and go through them and say okay, well, what does this mean for me? So this is a huge lesson in my life, massive. And so I just thought, you know what, this is something that the community needs and that I think is almost very important in my life right now too. So I thought, why not, right? Most of you know that my dad passed away 2 months ago now. 2 months ago.
Whoa.
September. Yeah. So this started before my dad passed, but it very much was important for our relationship together. So I had this relationship with my dad and it was not a great relationship. We had some situations in our family that happened. And to put it very bluntly, we were kind of estranged from each other. He was with me as well as my siblings. And so it was definitely one of those things that it hurt. It hurt no matter what, and I didn't know what to do about it, and I couldn't figure out why it still hurt and all the things. So this is basically the process of how I figured out what to do differently. My dad was notorious for being the kind of guy that I know his full intention was to be there and be supportive, but he was very distracted. I fully believe that my dad had ADHD as well, and that he had the best intentions in the world, but was horrible at firing the gun. He just could not press the button all the time. And he would say a lot of things, but they were kind of empty promises in the end. An example would be, I would come visit him out of the blue and he would say, I would be going to leave and he'd be so happy we were together. And then he'd say, okay, I'll call you tomorrow. And then I would wait for the call and the call would never come.
Oh my gosh.
And so there was always this very depressing feeling about it. And he wasn't the only one that did that to me. And I say it like that now, but my perception changed when I say he did that to me. Okay. So I think it's an important thing to say ahead of time.
But that's how you felt at the time. You're like,
he did this.
He told me he was going to do something. I looked forward to it and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Again and again.
This was other people in my life too. Sometimes it was my siblings. Sometimes it was my coworkers. It was whoever I was with, dating. It was, it carried through in many ways. And it really felt like people were for lack of a better expression, were doing me dirty. And I was very heartbroken because to say you're going to do something and then not follow through, it's sad. It sucks. It's well, who's there for me if nobody is,
Because that's not how you are, right? If you say, I'm calling you tomorrow, you are. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't, it's because something happened or whatever, but you will remember. And if you're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I didn't call you a couple days ago, I'm so sorry. But you do those things.
Yeah. And
And
part
so
of
you
that,
expect people to do that.
right. And part of that is being the change. I had this t-shirt once when I was a kid, and I probably brought this up before, but I don't remember. But I got it as a Christmas gift. And it's literally a shirt that said, be the change you want to see in the world. I mean, that's kind of a weird shirt to give like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, whatever. But it was very influential on me because it
Yeah.
was a different kind of thought process than what I was used to because in my family it was very reactive. It was
Yes.
very like this person did you dirty, then you get them back or you ignore them or you drop them off or like it was just very hard lines, you know? And so that particular shirt rang through in my head for a long time. And the sad thing is like when you're young and people do that to you, again, to you, you feel very sad like what did I do? What am I doing? This is like a thing that keeps happening. What am I doing? Am I a bad person? Am I like just not worth it? Am
Because
I
you
like
feel like they're being intentional. Like, I'm choosing not to call Cary today, even
yeah,
though I said I would.
and also
Hmm.
like it comes back to the worthiness like oh I'm not good enough for you to remember to stick to your promise or your word or
Hmm.
whatever. So that was definitely how I felt and I was constantly feeling let down and unworthy to summarize it. And there was also a time in me that I look back and I see that an example was I thought everybody the way I felt was how everybody felt. And it's a very ignorant thing to think. It really is. And until you broaden your horizon and until you take the time to look at other people and how they live and how they feel and how they act, like you really think that. Like I used to go into like parties and stuff and talk to the quiet person
Hmm.
because in my mind I thought we were all extroverts. And I told you this before, remember? Like I thought every single person was an extrovert and the introverted people were like the small number. And I think it's actually the opposite now that I'm older.
Hmm.
Or it's more like a gray area, you know, like some people can be
Yeah.
extroverted in some scenarios and introverted in another, and so on and so forth. But in my mind, as a kid, a younger person rather, not necessarily kid, I was like, yeah, full send, like, hey, you know, like I was just out there. So I just figured if other people were having fun too, so were they. But that's not
Oh,
necessarily
so
how it
you were like,
goes.
oh, that poor person, they're being quiet today, but I know they
Hmm.
want to be the life of the party and they want to be included and they want this, so I'm going to help them because
Yeah. Yeah. And
I
being
know
an
how
empath
I would feel in that situation.
and being
That's
empath,
I
go
don't
ahead.
think it's naive or dumb, like you said. It's just a smaller worldview, and you were growing up.
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
didn't know yet.
Ignorant. It like I do think ignorance is an okay word to use, especially when you're young. I was so ignorant about a million things, and that's a whole other episode. I think how I came from the country life to the city life, and I learned a lot. Let's just say that I was in a point where I was just feeling like I wasn't worthy enough, and that people just didn't care about me. So what changed? What changed for me was a moment, right? This is a moment that changed us. And I think with this episode specifically, there's several moments that like tie in together. And it's not always a linear path of how you get from point A to B. It can be very messy and up and down. But what changed for me? Picture me, I was, oh my God, how old was I? Probably like 33, 34, right? So about 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago now and I am at a funeral for our neighbor. Tom was our neighbor, and he was the nicest guy in the world. Just so nice. He was a veteran, and he was just a very cool guy. Just so nice. He was very welcoming to us. And when my son was little, he used to walk into the backyard just because he had nothing to do. I know for sure. Like if he heard us outside, he would be outside every day, especially when it was hot out. And he'd be like, "Can you have a popsicle?" And we're like, "Okay, it's before dinner, but sure," you know, because we are
Uh-huh.
trying to instill these rules. And he was just so sweet. He was like our grandpa next door, you know,
Yeah.
and so he ended up passing away. So I'm at his funeral, and I don't know if you have ever had to go to a funeral during pregnancy. Did you ever have to go to
Mm-mm.
one?
No.
Oh my God. So I only had to do one, and it was like my emotions were already charged up because it was my friend, but like also watching his children and his wife crying. And then you throw
Mm.
in his military, you know, they start
Mm-hmm.
playing the bugles, and it's like, Holy moly. And plus being pregnant, I just like I've never cried so hard in my life. Like
Hmm.
I never remember a moment where I sobbed so much and just like it was like in my whole body crying. Like just like my like
Oh
I
my
don't
gosh.
like my soul was crying like because this
Yeah.
person was gone and because of all the hardship and just like being an emotional wreck during pregnancy. Like let's just be honest,
Yeah.
it's we're just charged up. The moment that changed me was we were sitting at his funeral and his daughter, great writer, she's giving the eulogy. And again, sobbing, just pouring from me. And his daughter said a lot of things that I don't necessarily remember because this one thing stuck out. So she told the story. So my buddy Tom, he died of brain cancer basically in the end. He was in the Vietnam War and he had Agent Orange situation going on and it created this horrible cancer in his brain. And he fought it for so long. He fought it as long as he could. And his daughter was the caretaker for certain appointments. And so his daughter would pick him up and take him and whatever. So this particular appointment was probably towards the end, almost the end, okay, we'll say.
Hmm.
And it was a chemo and a brain scan situation. So I guess the story goes that the lady, the nurse came in and those two are in there and it's chemo and it's sad. No matter what, whether you're fighting or not, I can only imagine what it feels like to go through all this horrible hardship on your body and then still be like, oh no, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. Like trying to have hope while your body's like just
Dying.
clinging on, you know? And not only that, but like then you're the daughter watching, right? And so this nurse comes in and she's like setting up the machine or whatever. And essentially what happens is she's like complaining and mumbling under her breath. And she's like, blah, 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 you know, like kind of like just
Hmm.
going on a tirade. And his daughter, which I can see myself, especially with my dad, I know I did this, but I would just start getting upset. And I know she did too. Like, and she stood up and she said, you know, some people are fighting for their lives in here, right? Because
Hmm.
like, put your crap away, set up the machine and get out. Like, and basically this woman basically told her to go kick rocks, like told her to F off and like walked out. And so she's all fired up and angry, right? And so she's sitting next to her dad, again, brain cancer, just like the sweetest man in the world, and just sitting there. And he looks over to her and says, you know, everybody's just doing the best they can.
Hmm.
And it's very simple to say that. Like it's very simple words, but like think of how important that is. When she said that at the funeral, like I'm sobbing again, but it's also that moment that like sat me back and I was like, "Oh, right. Everyone is doing the best they can. We don't know what that lady's going through. Maybe she has her own parent who's failing, or maybe she's just a crotch. I don't know." Whatever, but maybe her capabilities are not equal to the ones that are in the room. And as much as I think that everyone should be respectful to everybody,
Hmm.
sometimes you just can't hold it in. You know, I know there's times I've snapped on people because of other things going on, especially like the people I actually did this the other day. So I'm trying to parent while I'm like, you know,
Yeah.
grieving still. And this guy comes up and we're at Target and he's like, tell me about your phone plan. And I was like, dude, like, no. And so he said, would you consider? I said, would you consider going away? Like, I was like snapping because I literally said, we're not interested. And then he pursued. And that's
Yeah.
their
No means
job.
no,
Like, I
people.
hated being in sales because of that. You're supposed to just like kick the horse, you know?
Hmm.
And which I think is not a good way to sell no matter what. Like, but anyways, I digress. The point is that sometimes you just can't avoid it, right? So, sitting in the funeral, I definitely started thinking, oh man, you know, this is exactly what I have been avoiding. Like, I haven't sat and thought, oh wow, these other people aren't capable, or they have limitations or different expectations, or just like a whole different standard of living and being and whatever,
Hmm.
right? So the thought never even crossed my mind, but sitting there in that moment, I immediately thought of my dad.
Hmm.
And I thought about like what my dad goes through and who he is, and then my mom. And it basically created this whole avalanche of me like rethinking everything I thought I knew about my family, specifically in that moment, right? And it was just very profound for me. Okay. So now that's part of it. Now I can't tell you the timeline here between this moment and the next, but I feel based on how it happened for me, that they weren't that far apart.
Mm-hmm.
So we're fast forwarding or whatever to a point where I started reading this book called Unfuck Yourself. I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you who the author is right now. I know it's Gary. I always forget his dang name, but it's a great book. And it's funny because my husband gave this book to me for Christmas one year. And I just think it's like such a Cary thing. I'm like, no, I really want this self-help book for Christmas. So he's like handing me in a
There
present,
you
like
go.
this book
Go
and
on,
this
fuck
journal.
yourself. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, and so, but this book is a great book. If anybody's interested in it, you can get it all over. The thing I really like about it is that because I am ADHD, it's got big words and pictures. Some pages are literally just a quote, and other like it's not
Oh.
a massive book. The
Mm-hmm.
chapters are short, and that's what I loved about it because I was able to just chew through it, no problem, one chapter at a time instead of being this big brick. And honestly, it had a lot of really great points in it, and it had a lot of great ideas and whatnot. But the one chapter that I read, I can't tell you exactly which number it is, but the one chapter that I read was towards the end, and basically it was about expectation versus reality. In it, it tells you that expectation is the idea of what you put on someone and how it will happen. The reality, though, is not always the same. So what I'm
Okay.
realizing is that when my dad said something like, "Oh, I'm going to call you tomorrow," the expectation was brought up that tomorrow he would call me. But the reality was my dad had all these barriers that didn't work in his favor and didn't allow him to push past it just being an idea to make it a reality.
And maybe in his mind too, I'll call you tomorrow is kind of like saying, look out for deer, the Midwest of saying, it's like, I love you. I'll call you tomorrow. No intention of calling, not to be hurtful, but just meaning I'm going to keep thinking about you. You're still in my life or something. I don't know. But yeah,
Yeah, and that's
so
a really good point because, especially when you're in a place that is, I'm going to say like thirsty or needy, because I wanted my dad around.
yeah.
I hung on every single word he ever said.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was that reading that chapter in that book, coupled with the eulogy, was like this moment for me to like open the door and close it. There was no more hanging on every single word because there was a moment where I realized that and it talks about this in the book that if you're I haven't read this book in a long time either, so I know there's lots of other nuggets in there, but I was basing it on how I felt inside of what
Mm-hmm.
would happen instead of the history. So
Okay.
history shows he would say that to me all the time, but he wouldn't actually do it again and
Mm-hmm.
again and again. And history showed that he would say the same things to my siblings, but again, he wouldn't do it. And he would call me out of the blue. And a couple times he called me on my birthday, but otherwise, what did
No.
history show? So the proof in the pudding was that my expectation was a place way higher or differently than what he was actually able to do. So the other part about this is that it talks about how you're in those moments because the expectation is so high, you're kind of like let down.
Yeah.
And so you feel the let down feelings and you're sad and all that. And so the point is to bring the expectation up to the reality so that way you don't fall down. And I started paying attention to how it felt in my body when he said it versus how it felt when I changed that expectation. And
Mm-hmm.
then I just kind of realized he's not going to call. So when he called, it would like put this
You
bump
what?
up there.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
excited. Yeah, because he actually called me. Even if he didn't that day, he might call me a couple days later or whatever, right? And so then I started looking at that in like everything, right? So if you say your husband says, we're making chicken noodle soup for dinner, and
Mm-hmm.
that day you're like, yeah, chicken noodle soup. And then you come home and it's tacos. Think of just how you feel already in that moment. Ooh, even though it's not a bad choice,
No.
maybe he's even better at tacos. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is because it changed and because it's not what was said, it's like this little letdown. It's not like as big as if you're like, oh, we're going on a cruise and then, oh,
Mm-hmm.
psych, no cruise is coming.
Or if he says I'm making chicken noodle soup and all day long I'm like, he's making dinner. This is so great. And I come home and he says, I'm making something else. I'm like, I don't care. You're making dinner. And
Yeah,
I don't
because you're
have to.
summarizing it down to
Because
dinner instead of like on a molecular
mhm.
level, right? So yeah. I
This
totally,
is a
yeah.
very interesting viewpoint, Carrie, because my life is lower expectations, which JB says is
Mm,
Debbie Downer or um,
sorry.
pessimist. But
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, like that whole, if my dad said he's going to call me and it was a thing that I was excited about and looked forward to, and then it didn't happen, I hate the letdown. So for me, if someone says, I'll call you tomorrow, I don't even think twice that they're going to call me. I'm like, maybe they will. I'll be ready. But I have zero expectations because, yeah, I don't even know how you emotionally survived. I could not survive that if I had those expectations because I don't know how to process being let down. Like, it's just not a computable thing for me. So my expectations are bottom, like
Yeah.
as a defense mechanism. So, like, I feel for you for all the times anything in your life where you had this excitement and expectation and then it didn't happen because I don't know how do you process that?
Yeah. So what's so interesting about you saying that, and I'm thinking back to my childhood, my mom's very pessimistic. She is, and maybe it's a
Does it drive you
Sagittarius thing.
crazy? And you're
Might be a,
like, I'm going to have expectations because you're a Debbie Downer. I'm going to be the hopeful one.
yeah.
So,
So I think that maybe could be twofold, chicken or the egg kind of
mm-hmm,
situation, right? Was I an optimistic child from day one? Probably. That's just who I am.
mm-hmm,
Or did I overcompensate because it was a very pessimistic family? Was
yeah,
I trying to counter it? Because we talked about this too before, like being an Enneagram 2, primarily, I'm always balancing. I'm always doing what I can to keep everybody healthy and happy and safe and everyone's
mm-hmm.
good. And like, so there's this constant over
So you want to
overcompensation
balance out
sometimes.
your mom's negative and be like, let's bring the heat up a little bit or the excitement in the
Yeah.
room up.
And my dad would be both. He would be like my parents were both the same, but it was like up or down. It's nothing derogatory. It's just
Yeah.
like how they are.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's I think emotional stability. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is emotional stability. And so I was just thinking when you were describing your how you were or are, and I think were you or are you more because like this is not a linear thing to be able to measure emotions,
Yeah.
right? But are you more emotionally stable or do you have more emotional health than I do? Because is it that I have less or more? You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
because you're already regulating the situation when I'm like doing the opposite. You know what I mean?
That's a good
So like are
question.
you more advanced?
Or maybe I'm less advanced because I cannot handle the letdown. Like I cannot. So I protect myself. But
Yeah.
also maybe because maybe I'm more of a skeezy person in this way. Like I let people down all the time because I forget stuff. I get confused. I'm just like all over the place. So if JB says I'm making chicken soup for dinner and I come home and he's making tacos, I'm not let down because I'm like, oh yeah, man, I get it. I do the same thing. You totally forgot you were gonna make chicken noodle soup or whatever, and then I feel like, cool, I'm not the only idiot,
But
who
here's the
messes things
thing.
up.
And I think like
So
remember earlier when I was saying that people were doing me dirty? Like it was like
yeah,
like
your perception, yeah,
yeah, and as you grow, or at least as I grew, I recognize that I own my feelings.
mm-hmm,
So again, expectation versus reality. So do I, because I own my feelings and I recognize that changing an expectation that it doesn't isn't equal, right? That's my fault for putting it there because I know that if they let me down, I'm going to be sad. So it's like this, and maybe that's just like maybe I'm the one broken because now I have all these coping mechanisms I made. But I know that if I say you call me a name, right?
mm-hmm,
And I let it bother me, then that's on me because I know in who I am and myself that that's not true. And also like it's your opinion, it's not truth, right?
mm-hmm.
So it's on me to own my feelings and how I react to things.
You can still think I'm a turd face for calling
Yeah,
you a
I could
name.
still
You
or
can be like,
like
hey,
crap friend,
shut
right?
it.
Yeah. And so but it's up to me. And so when I recognize that, it changed another part of that like expectation versus reality because I mean to run a podcast like my biggest fear was like the haters,
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah, like I drag my feet so long because I'm like, what if I don't say it right?
What
What
if
if I say
one
too
person
much?
says something
Oh my
like,
gosh, yeah.
eh,
And I think that that's just part of life is like owning who you are,
mm-hmm,
recognizing that how you react is your way of doing it,
mm-hmm.
and it's up to you to not let shit bother you, you
Yeah,
know?
or
And
however much it does. Yeah.
right, yeah. And so like knowing that, that's why now I stop blaming people for it.
Mm,
So I stopped blaming my dad for hurting me. I let his bullshit hurt me. That's his
mm-hmm.
bullshit. But when I
Yep.
let it hurt me, then that's mine. It
Mm,
becomes my bullshit, right? And so there's another like descaling that I went through of like understanding what the truth is inside of me versus the truth outside of me. Because most of the time, in fact, all the time, you're able to see like this particular episode is really about how I saw the proof in the pudding that none of it was in a way to hurt me. People are just all in their own little bubbles. They're all in their own little bubbles. And we think, like, I definitely thought for so long that people were trying to hurt me, like, literally, like, take out a weapon and hurt me with these things. But really, they were just doing literally the best they can and their own limitations, whether it's like self doubt or time management or, um, I mean, it could be 100 different things like anger issues or how they're feeling, how they're emotionally processing things. Like all these things affect how we interact with each other. And so that's when I realized like, number one, stop changing an expectation to something that's not even like able to be done at all.
mm-hmm.
And then number two, understanding that that's literally as far as they can go. That doesn't mean they'll always be like that, but that's literally as far as they can go. And then re-racking that
Mm-hmm.
expectation of no, literally this is their limit. And some people have alcohol problems and some people have childhood trauma and it can go on and on and on. But the point of this episode is if it wasn't for that realization, I would have had zero relationship with my dad in the end.
Like you wouldn't have been reaching out to him because the last few years things kind of ratcheted up as far as your dad had become ill and you were helping him and stuff, and you would reach out to him. Like he didn't reach out to you very often. And it seemed to me, from my point of view, you were like, well, I want a dad. And this is the dad I have. And if I want him, then I will do X, Y, and Z without expecting him to be a certain way. You're like, I will call him, I will go visit him or whatever, and just take him where he is. And if I'm okay with it, then I can have a dad.
Right. So basically, there was a choice point. Someone had a family friend had been taking care of him, and then she had her own situation with her dad happen. And she called me and she said, I can't, I literally can't anymore. And I remember hanging up the phone and sitting there, and everything felt like it was tumbling down around me. And I had all these fears of, well, what if I go there and he tells me that he doesn't want me there? And
Mm,
what if I go there and, like, there's just all these ideas of what if I can't change? What if he dies? There's
yeah.
just all these things of, well, how do I feel? I'm angry still,
Yeah.
or I'm resentful, and I just
Do
like
I
this
want to
whole
do this?
tumbling
Yeah.
happened. And I sat there in my feelings and I recognized something. And this is something I'm going to bring up in the next episode, which is the hair episode. I recognized that no matter how I moved forward, I needed to, first of all, put the expectation to the ground
Mm-hmm.
because this is my only chance to have anything with my dad. And I then realized that at the end of the day, when I lay down at night, I need to be proud of whatever decision I make.
Mm.
Even if I had gone there and he told me to go kick rocks, I would know at the end of the day that I did what was best for me and I would never live in the what if. Because the
Yeah.
what if is, I think, the scariest realm in the world. It can be a beautiful place, but it's also very scary, especially when your opportunity is passed. So that's what I did. I put my expectation to the floor, um, and I just said, I'm doing this because I had just quit my job that day too.
Oh,
So
yes.
it felt
Uh-huh.
very aligned for me that, and I had this overarching feeling in me for months to quit my job. And it didn't make sense. I mean, it did, but also it didn't. And it was like, but I felt this rush in my intuition, like get out, get out. And so I ended up quitting, putting in my notice, but then I left early because it worked out for me. And literally I was enjoying like a drink of like, okay, I moved through this, not sure what was happening, but here's like this alcoholic beverage. I think it was like a Moscow Mule or something. And I'm enjoying it, and then I get the call and I'm like, oh, and I like set the drink down. I'm like,
I
okay, here
can't
we
even
go.
finish a drink.
I know, it's like
And
suiting up, you know, in my superhero suit.
life adjusts. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm so grateful for the lessons. I'm so grateful for every tear I dropped in the process between Tom and, you know, the changes of my life. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to look back and see these realizations and then grieve or forgive the younger you for not knowing better or not figuring it out sooner or whatever. And I'm just so grateful for that moment that I was ready and read that book and alchemized the lessons, because I literally was okay enough to move forward and have a relationship with my dad in the end. Because truthfully, I needed that so badly. It healed so much of me. I can't even, and maybe that's a whole new episode. It healed so much of me to just be there for him and have our little moments where we were able to have fun, even though he was really sick. And I feel so good. There's not a lot of regret in me after all of this because I put that expectation in a different place.
Yeah.
And I was able to make it my own.
Expecting to take care of your dad, however that looked, and just to show up and do it. And who knows? Yeah. Because I know some days he was crotchety with you.
Oh, he was awful.
And you were like, I had to tell my dad how it was today because he's being a butthole and I'm trying to help him. And I know he doesn't feel good, but crotchety man. But yes, I noticed when you would tell me those things, use him. I had to put my dad in his place or tell him, knock it off. He's being a turd face. But you weren't like, he was so mean to me and I'm so upset. You were just like, I had to tell him how it was.
And
then we moved on with our, yeah, it sucked. But you just didn't seem to feel like he was coming after you or wanting to make you feel bad. Like, even though I'm sure you still feel like everyone feels that way, they have that instinctive feel, but you just seem to have a clarity of mind of, he's a grump today. And it's regardless of whether I'm there or not, he was a grump today. And I went in there and I did my thing and it was a good day. You know, things still happened, even if you're like, you felt bad about it. So I don't know how I can explain that, but
no, I think you're explaining it just right. And if you flip this whole idea on the other side, the expectation and reality is also a thing you can give people. So if you think about what you just said to my dad, or what you just said about my dad, or what I said, yeah, I had to lay into him. I had to like become this crabby person back, not even crabby, just like firm, because I had to set an expectation that he couldn't be like that to me. And that's a boundary.
yeah.
Right? So setting the expectation for him and then also making it the reality. There's no confusion there because not only did I say don't do it, but then I really said don't do it. And I showed you I wasn't going to tolerate that. And I guess that's a boundary together if you put the two together, right?
Yeah.
And so that's another great thing I learned from my dad was like I had shit boundaries. I'm just going to be honest. I had very shit boundaries. And then he would yell at me. There was a time when he was in the hospital twice for 6 weeks at a time. And by the second time, he wasn't doing physical therapy because he was in a lot of pain. And he just was going to be the guy that he was. Like if he didn't want to do it, he's not going to do it. He was so stubborn. And so I brought him home because, you know, you go from the hospital room in a wheelchair and then you go to the car and then you get home and there's no wheelchair there. There's like steps. And
Out in the country. Yeah. You don't have a ramp.
There's no ramp. There's no nothing.
Neighbor to hustle over and help you out. You're in the middle of nowhere.
And my dad didn't ever say this to me, but he couldn't walk.
Oh my gosh.
So literally I drove him to the steps.
Did he even know he couldn't walk?
I don't think so.
You
and
opened
he yelled
the door
at me the whole time. And because my dad wasn't a great communicator. And so like
Yeah,
It's
he was
just so ridiculous.
frustrated and pissed with
He's
himself. He
pissed,
couldn't
he's
walk.
frustrated, and he's trying to tell me, like, he doesn't want me to help him, but then he also needs help. And
Oh
so
my
he's just like
God.
screaming at me. And it was like this horrible day of just like sobbing and just screaming back at him. And like, just, it was a horrible day, but like, my expectations were on the floor. So whatever,
The
like,
expectations get the geezer in the house.
yeah,
He
get the
might run
geezer
his
in the
mouth at
house.
me.
Yeah. And he, like, it is what it is, but I just laugh because it was just a shitty day. But
Yeah.
that in those moments, I found an opportunity to show him who I was. And at the end of the day, my dad thanked me. He thanked
Oh,
me. He's
that
like,
day.
yeah, and like he even called me. And maybe he didn't apologize that day, but at one point he did call me and say I'm sorry. Then my dad did not say I'm sorry, but he just
Hmm.
didn't openly just like say
Yeah.
it. It was
Yeah,
not
no.
like just
I
something
know
that
dudes
rolled
like
off the
that.
tongue.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, and so it showed him the reality of like I'm there to help him, but also the reality of you got to help yourself, buddy, because she can't do it all for you, and she's not
Hmm.
gonna let you bullshit her, you know.
Yeah.
So that was a really good lesson, overall and in between, because that's when my boundaries started, and that's when I started to grow and not take crap from him and
Hmm.
other people, you know.
Yeah.
And then
I
that plays into after that. That's when my grandma, you know, in that time frame too, my grandma got sick, which that's a whole nother episode too. But yeah, so like the boundaries were
hmm
building. But if I didn't know that expectation versus reality, that's a whole nother scenario where I would have really been in a hard place because
Yeah.
with my grandpa, you know, it was like, yeah, which is a whole nother thing. Because my grandpa and my dad weren't very, like, they're very similar. So, yeah, it was definitely a lot of lessons in that for me. But the one thing I wanted to say as well, I actually looked in the definition because you and I had talked about this before, and we had said, well, what's the difference between like hope and expectation?
Hmm.
And so I literally looked
Hmm.
it up. And so I sat here looking at these sentences, and I'm going to read them thoroughly and slowly, but also then I'm going to tell you my cliff notes of it because it took me a minute to like really see the difference in what they
Yeah.
were. And
Okay.
so hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen. So I summarized it as wishful thinking.
Okay. Also,
Okay.
expectation plus desire equals hope.
Right. And
Okay.
so then to have, it's funny though, because I didn't expect
Ha ha ha.
expectation to be in hope,
Definition.
the
Yeah.
definition. Thank you. And so expectation is a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future.
Okay.
And so I sat there for a minute, like trying to, because what is the number one rule about definitions? You can't have the word that you're defining in
In
the.
the
So it
in
was kind of confusing because the hope had the other definition in it, right? So I'm like
yes.
really cross-examining it, and all I realized in the end that the difference is with hope there is a desire, and with expectation there is a belief. So it's a wish versus like a full belief in your body. Does that make sense? It's not really different from each other, which is very interesting to me.
Hope
But I
feels
think
more aspirational though. Like
yes,
expectation
thank you.
is I expect this factual thing. And
Yeah, it's like
hope,
more of a solid, right?
like
Yeah.
you expected your dad to call you the next day and say hi. But you also hoped he would because of how nice that would feel. If
Yeah.
he called you, you desired him to call you because that meant he cared about you and he wanted to talk to you.
Yeah. So the other part I wanted to say in all this is, and I've kind of touched on the subject very quickly, but so the biggest example is of my dad. And literally I'm giving you examples, but then it started to trickle down. And then I'm like, oh, what about my siblings?
Or
What about
spread.
my mother?
Mm-hmm.
What about my spouse?
Mm-hmm.
What are the expectations of myself? What about my children?
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge one because,
Ugh.
yeah, that's a huge one
Everyone should
because
have zero expectations of
yeah,
children.
and then when you accidentally, I know looking back at my childhood and then being an adult and a parent, there are so many expectations that I put on them that my parents put on me. But that
Hmm.
doesn't mean they actually apply to that child. Like we're not the same
Yeah.
people. You can't parent us the same. And I know like that was a very big undoing for me to stop and go, wait a minute. I'm trying to give them an expectation of who I am. And it's just, it's not the same. You can't do that. You can't. It was very cool because I remember going through it with my dad and then thinking through it with my mom and then just thinking like my mom isn't me. And there's
Mm-hmm.
so many times that I wanted her to parent me in the way that I wanted to be parented, but she wasn't
Uh-huh.
me. And so I had to like apologize to her. I didn't have to, I chose to, and be like, sorry, mom. I was expecting you to be someone completely different instead of just valuing what you were giving me. And then the other times that it was a great opportunity to know this was during the funeral process
For your dad.
for my dad. Yeah, because I could have expected everyone to equally share responsibility, share opportunity to show up in a way to, but literally each of us is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there was a moment that I like a very brief like sprinkle of moment where I was like, well, I'm doing this, she should be doing this, or he should be, or whatever. But really, what's the reality? We
Mm-hmm.
can't all be here. We can't all do the same things. We can't, and so on. And so then that was a really helpful thing for me to help navigate all this crap that comes with funerals and death. It's not like cut and dry at all. So I feel it's a great opportunity for me to share with my siblings and remind them that we aren't each other.
That and each other too. Like if one gets frustrated with one, like they didn't do the thing they said, or they're not helping how I think they should. Like you
Yeah, and
can
there's a
say
reason we're all
this,
different.
yeah. You have
There's a
different things
reason.
you can bring to the table, different abilities. And it might be that right now you have a lot more capacity to do X. And maybe a few years down the road, when you guys need help with some other project in the family, you can't, but they can step in. You know, like
Right.
everyone has different phases of when they can have different capacities too.
Yeah.
So,
It's a very valuable tool. And same thing with if you go into extended family. I expected some extended family to step up and be there, but they were nowhere to be found. Well, whose problem is that? My reality, versus
mhm.
expectation was not sustainable. So then I can't, is it like, should I be mad? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. And it's been really helpful in managing that. And then also at a more molecular level, because if I go to school and I'm going to parent teacher conferences, I'm expecting the teacher to be a certain way and she's not. Well, then I find out she has a child at home and she's struggling. Like there's all these things that like we don't know is going on in the background, but I can't keep expecting people to not be human,
Yeah.
and like even that guy at Target, like I'm sorry I was like that but I know you were doing your job and doing the best you could, but like I'm not going to take that personally. And the other thing that I think is so beautiful about this lesson, because it wasn't an easy lesson in the reality, it
No, this
was
is a long-term thing for you to process and to build on.
yeah, but the thing is it let me let go so much. I stopped holding on to my worthiness is coupled into how people respond to me, how they show up for me. It was able to let go of just a lot of stuff. It just started becoming this whole revolution for me. Same thing with, we'll talk about the dinner situation. Even if it's chicken noodle soup or tacos, it doesn't matter. Dinner's still made. So why am I being so hell bent on having one or the other? It's
Because
still
you're having
food.
hope and a really good meal of chicken. Okay.
Honestly, those like I'd rather have tacos every day. But it starts to trickle down, and I can tell you right now, my anxiety is like so much better. Like I do not have a
Oh,
drop in the
wow.
bucket compared to like there was so much anxiety based around what I thought people should be
Like
because
where you fit into society with them, right? Kind of like
yeah, and
how
more
you were.
like I expected everybody to be like me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, oh, you're not going to kill yourself. And this is especially in my days of being what is it called when the two is
The helper.
the unhealthy. That's what it is, right? The unhealthy two. Is that
Mm-hmm.
what
Of
it
the
is?
Enneagram.
Toxic two, something like that. I don't, something like that. Just it's a bad word, like a
Yeah.
word like that. Yeah. So when I was being toxic or unhealthy, it was like, oh. April, you're not going to throw yourself on the knives in order to make this happen. I
Mm-hmm.
would. Well, it's my perception. It's what I choose to do. It's how where I prioritize something. So,
Yeah.
like, I encourage all listeners to consider how much expectation you're putting out there and then judging it against the reality of what the history shows. I think that's why we have so much anxiety out there. Think of how we perceive Instagram and the Christmas decorating and the clean house and all these things. We think that everyone's house is this super clean place, but if we start talking to your other friend moms, like, oh my, this is a shit show. Welcome, you're welcome to come in and help clean if you want. It's not like that. And then you start to see the real people on Instagram who post like this beautiful section of their house. Then they turn the computer or the phone around and they're like, they just shoved everything against the other wall to make it look so nice. There's so much anxiety that comes from that expectation being something that's very unreasonable.
Or of us thinking we have to live up to an expectation
Oh
too.
God, yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot. That's a lot of it. So it was a very unraveling lesson that helped me let go and just be like, this is what it is. Does it matter? Does it need to be this other way? Does it need to be, and just putting the expectations to the floor in certain areas. I still think your expectation should be high when you're choosing people in your life. You should, you know, make it a place where it's equal and where you're being well taken care of instead of just dealt with. But I think that it's really important to view all of those in all the different layers and really look at like how you set yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best way to say it.
Yeah, and I think also to know that you can't change the people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you have high expectations. So, say you had high expectations for your dad
Mm-hmm.
and he was a different person, and you decided, well, I still love him and I want my dad. So, I'm just going to accept that he does not perform at highest dad levels that I want. But
Mm-hmm.
if you are at a job and your boss is not, you have an expectation of how your boss is going to treat you and run the company. If they're not doing that, sure, you can lower your expectations and know, okay, this person is not hitting it. You don't have to accept it though. You don't, or you can accept that that's what they are like, but you don't have to maintain that atmosphere. You can say, we've both had jobs where we're like, what is going on here? And you can say, well, I have higher expectations for this situation, so I'm going to step out.
Right.
I'm not going to let myself be treated this way or be on this roller coaster of who knows what happens when you walk through the door at work each
Mm-hmm.
day. So there is a balance, but yeah, you don't have the emotional reaction. Like if one of us walked into work and it was like another chaos day, well, we know that our expectations for them will never be met. They are chaos or whatever, causing trouble, difficulties. And so you don't have to accept it, but you don't have this emotional reaction, right? Or it's
Yeah,
not
it's
taking up
funny.
space in your head where you're just like, I'm putting all this energy into this situation that is not whatever, it's never going to be what I think it should be.
I think the most revealing thing about this episode and talking it through, which of course I always love talking to you, April, it's my favorite time, is that I didn't realize how closely expectation and boundaries were.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Like, like they're
They inform each
basically,
other.
yeah. And so it's just like kind of this light, like, that little emoji with the head exploding. That's like exactly how I feel right now. Like, wow, like I didn't realize how closely related they were and how they fed into each other. And yeah,
Yeah. You
it's
still
such an
have
important
boundaries.
thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even if your expectation is at the floor, you still have boundaries.
Mm-hmm. So that's one of my takeaways. One of the other takeaways I wanted to bring up that I just thought of, especially if you're listening and this is like blowing your mind or not, or maybe you just needed a reminder, honestly. But one of the things I would say is if you're looking at this idea and you're like, oh, I never thought of this before, I would say the indicator for me of like where these situations needed to be analyzed or how I needed to review how I felt versus what the reality
Mhm.
was where I felt the most strife or the most pain or like wherever the pain points are.
Okay.
Because I always had this hesitation when thinking about calling my dad because I didn't want to be let down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't call my dad. I would, but I wouldn't. It would
Yeah.
really take like
Not as much as
okay.
you felt like it or decided to or
Yeah.
wished. Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, he's not going to answer. He's not going to call me back. And my dad was the guy that like never set up his voicemail anyways. So it's
My
not
mother's
like,
like, I've called my mother twice this week. And they're like, the mailbox you've called has not been set up.
oh yeah.
And then I texted my mother, said, hey, call me. I have some questions about X and X and X. And she's like, okay. And
Yeah.
she never called me.
Yeah. That's
She's
about
usually
right.
pretty good about stuff, but I'm like, you people of this different generation, you at least need a voicemail. We need to
Yeah.
be able to let you know if it's important or not. Anyway, so.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it was just like, well, what's the point, right?
Your
It's a
dad
very
would
big
lose his
lesson.
phone a lot, wouldn't he? Or
Oh
just
my God.
not like his phone was an afterthought. He needed those old-fashioned landlines with the cord, and it was always in the same spot.
Well,
Like-
he was a popular guy. Like, I mean, I say that now after a lot of reviewing and a lot of grief and a lot of like just thinking through all these things.
And seeing the turnout at his funeral.
Yeah, it's like I'm a lot like my dad. And it's that idea that I'm a popular lady and I like to talk to people. And I remember that my dad would just like the phone would not stop ringing. So for
really?
him,
He was a chatty Cathy.
He's a chatty Cathy. People like you see like people would just I would be here like for a whole day and people would just show up until he started telling people, hey, my daughter comes on Thursday. And then we would only see like one or two people.
Yeah.
But then otherwise it would just be like a revolving
People
door.
coming over.
And then he would never have like and so that okay, this is another version of expectation versus reality. He would sit here and gripe about how he couldn't get anything done. Well, why couldn't he get anything done?
Because it's
Because
a
it was a
social
revolving-
hour.
Yeah,
His
like,
house
all the
is the
time.
bar.
And I realized that's exactly it. So people would bring their beer and they would come over and they would chat with him because they weren't allowed to do that at home. So ready? This is another like ready. So think about what we just said: expectation versus boundaries and reality, and how they feed
Yeah.
into each other. Because my dad had no boundaries, his expectations were always failing him.
Oh, yeah?
Because he would expect to get a bunch of things done, but he didn't have boundaries enough to
gosh.
say, "Hey, you guys gotta like go away for now."
Come over
Or
on
you can-
Tuesdays.
Yeah, come over on Tuesdays, whatever. And so that's like a really interesting thing to think through too. Because wow, holy moly, are those tied together? I never thought of that before.
So crazy. Yeah, I did want to also add out before we leave that you are recording this at your dad's house because you've referred to the place a few times, like, oh, when I was here. And I know that you're recording at your dad's house, but now the listener does. So
Yeah, yep, it's definitely yeah.
because you're still working on your dad's estate and dealing with all of the aftermath when somebody dies. And
Definitely a long process, that's for sure.
it's not the funeral's here, and then the next day everyone goes back to their lives.
Yeah, it's
So
not
Well,
in this house.
I think these are fantastic things. And I think a lot of people are going to, hopefully it opens up their eyes to like even one relationship where they think, oh, if I changed my mindset on this, what does that look like? And how does it just change things?
And I'd like to say a call to action here because I think that there's a lot of growth that can happen in community, and that's one of the things that you and I love, like we're hoping to have in this podcast, like not only a place for us to hang out and like have these fun conversations, because like we would go to quote weekend and have these and leave so feeling like, well, how would you describe how we feel when we leave quote weekend?
Euphoric or like the super, super high, because we would go to this quote weekend. It's like, what, 48 hours? Not even.
Yeah, barely by the time we get unpacked.
Talking the whole time about cool shit the whole time, and it's just feeding into our souls.
Yeah, it didn't ever feel like enough. So
And then you
part
get
of
in
it
your
was
car
like,
and drive away, and then you're like, oh
and
my
you're still
God.
thinking about everything that was talked about.
Yes.
Yeah. And so that was like one of the best things of Quote Weekend and what we wanted to bring to this podcast, as well as I think community is so important now. And I think vulnerability is definitely something you and I share and we're able to give. And I would love to see other people have a space where they can feel vulnerable enough to say what they can. Now, some people can't give us all the details, and that's okay. But I would love to see people go on our Instagram and blow it up, because I think it would be such a lovely place for people to say, hey, when you said this, I uncovered this about me. And I think that once we get together and we all start sharing that, it lets other people think, oh, maybe that affects me. And then we get to heal each other. It's like my favorite thing about being in community is giving that little bit that helps heal us all, you know?
Yeah, because of the messages we're giving are helping people. But it's because people talk to us personally, one on one, and tell us like what they got from a different episode or things like that. So we're hearing all this feedback from people, and it is cool if people feel comfortable commenting, because not only, okay, so our words are going out, Cary, and they are shaping people's lives, giving them things to think about or to try for and aspire for, right? We love hearing that shit too. Like hearing someone else's story helps us and
Yeah.
anyone else who hears it. We're not the only ones with good ideas or good stories.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
kind of, like a springboard for more conversation and more in-depth
And you
reflection
think for a
and
second,
stuff.
wait, we got to make sure we have the explicit label on our podcast, because I know, like, if you think for a second I'm not going to let some MFer like talk shit about somebody, I'm going to delete them in a second. Like, we are not playing that game. We are holding space for
Yeah.
vulnerability
Oh,
and
and block.
positivity and
Blocking. I
block.
love
Yeah,
blocking people.
we ain't playing that game, because you know what? We need community so badly, and again, be the change you want to see in the world. I want to see people happy, being held, being vulnerable, being accountable. I want them to feel empowered. I want to fix every damn crown of every person I see, and I want to straighten it for every woman or any man. I don't care, anybody. I want to fix that crown. I want to straighten it up for you, because the truth is, like, if we don't do it for each other, who the hell is going to do it for us?
Yeah. And fixing our own crowns helps people fix theirs.
Yeah.
And not being afraid to say
Heck
my crown
yes.
my crown was tarnished and crooked, and I straightened it a little bit today. It's still pretty ugly, but I did this. I
Let's
stepped out
bedazzle that shit.
and I put some fake jewels on it because I can't afford the good stuff.
Yeah.
But that's the best I could do today. You guys can do it too.
Yeah.
You know?
This is our life, right? So, thanks for the chat today, my friend. Thank you for listening to Finch and Sparrow Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed our stories related to our lessons or just laughed along with us. We sincerely thank you for spending your time with us today. A special thanks to our friend Caitlin Vinci for letting us use her song We Rise. You can check out her full song and other tracks at CaitlinVincimusic.com. Follow along with us on our Instagram at Finch_N_Sparrow. There you can find out what we're up to, see what's inspiring us, and maybe what we're going to do next. See you next time.
Yes, you can be real and true, and it's all you allow yourself to do.